So are we all here? Can we get started, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we should be good.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Could we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, could I have a roll call, please?
Supervisor, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Is anybody else doing that?
I can hear her.
I can hear her.
I can hear.
Okay, I'm gonna sign out and get back in.
Maybe it's me.
I'll take a roll call quick.
All right.
Councilmember Christine Adams there.
Here.
Councilmember Linda Hammer. I see her. Councilmember Michael Jazinski.
Here.
Councilmember Gerald Kaminsky.
He looks
I
like
do
he's
not
absent.
see him yet.
No.
Councilmember Brian Noah.
President and Councilmember Kaminsky, to my understanding, won't be here this evening.
Okay.
Councilmember Brian Pilarski.
Present.
And Supervisor Diane Benchkowski.
Here. Okay, so we have six present. I know Councilmember Pilarski has to leave shortly. I'd like to start with Lisa Bolognese. She has to leave also. So we're going to be talking about the use of the American Rescue Funds. And Lisa, you have the floor.
Great. Everybody can hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Okay. So I have some resolutions that have passed already that have been slated for American Rescue funding. Do you want me to cover the ones that we've already approved first?
Yeah, just quickly so we know
Okay.
where we are right now, because I did think we did approve some, yes.
Yep. Resolution 2021-586 was to upgrade youth and recreation registration program. That was to help the Youth and Rec Department, Jill, to purchase a program that is better suited for her needs. That resolution was passed on November 9th. Does anybody have any questions about that
What
one?
was the amount on that?
The amount on this one was the one-time cost of $32,315 and then an annual maintenance at approximately $18,000, but it was based on registration.
Okay, and I know Brian Kraus, we'll let you do the presentation too, so he's been kind of keeping track of everything. So go ahead, what's the next one, Lisa?
Okay, the next one is resolution, same thing last year, resolution 610 to upgrade the property management system. That was to help Rick Coburn's department, and this was a good use of the funds as well as the Youth and Rec Department because this was helping us to do more interaction with the public. The meeting was November 23rd, and that had a cost not to exceed $250,000 with annual maintenance at just under $2,000 a year once we had the initial setup done.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, the third one that was already passed was resolution 611 from last year. This is Wi-Fi infrastructure upgrade. I know all of you are aware, we've spoken about this in the past, that our Wi-Fi was set up prior to the pandemic. Now we obviously have more interaction and connectivity from the outside. So this was one that was important to me. The resolution was passed on November 23rd. That is to upgrade our Wi-Fi environment, and also it would be hosted. And this one was at a cost of about $80,000.
Okay.
The fourth one was resolution 685 that was passed on December 28th. This was another really important one for three departments. This would be IT, Human Resources, and the Finance Office. And this is to put us in a better solution with UKG, who was formerly Kronos, to have a better workforce development platform, as well as onboarding and offboarding, and a payroll system that included time clocks. The cost was not to exceed $250,000 for the first year. This one, when we did this resolution, it was focusing mostly on the human resources aspect. So there is going to be additional funding for this, but I haven't had the time to really nail down some more numbers. I would imagine that the time clocks and the payroll piece is going to be very similar in price to what we're doing right now. This was a big one. So
Okay.
those four were passed already.
So what else do we still need to do?
So
Exactly.
when I sent out the email back in June, there were some other things that I was hoping that we would be able to fund that I think is important for us. I would like to go from our in-house Microsoft platform to Office 365. This is going to be a subscription type service. We currently set aside about $90,000 a year for our Microsoft products and licensing. This would take us to a cloud-based subscription platform. It would be about, we're thinking somewhere between 130 and 140,000 a year, but I don't have those final numbers because I have to get down to how many licenses we need. But this is going to provide us accessing files from anywhere, better remote services, secure cloud storage, improved communication. I think some of you may be familiar with Office 365, may have used it before. It will be, we'll be able to eliminate a server. We'll put our Exchange server, it would eliminate our Exchange server, and we will be able to enhance our email archiving. And, you know, with the limited resources that we have and my limited staff, this is one thing that I think that the town could benefit from using the rescue funding money.
Okay.
Resolution has not been submitted yet. I'm still working on numbers.
Okay. But at least we have a ballpark figure to plan for. Okay.
And that would be an ongoing number. We currently right now, I have, like I said, between $80,000 and $90,000 a year in licensing that I put aside that's in my budget. It would increase, that number would be increased, but the benefits, I named a couple, but as far as cybersecurity and licensing, the benefits are enormous in this product to us.
Does anybody want to jump in if they have any questions
Any
while we're on
questions?
this one?
I agree with
Wait,
Lisa on the
okay.
365. It definitely makes sense. It saves on servers and stuff like that. It's all cloud-based and it's remote. You can go remote with it. It follows you in the cloud. So if you're going from a desktop to a laptop, same files are all right there.
Yeah, right now we license one, you know, you have one license and that license is in our environment. So we don't have the ability for you to work outside of our environment without adding additional licensing. So this is definitely gonna over time be a great investment.
Lisa, will
yep.
we be able to eliminate any other costs because this program is going to take care of so many different things?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the total cost isn't really quantifiable because I'm eliminating, you know, the work that my staff has to do. We're eliminating the server. We're eliminating patching for the server. We're eliminating the cooling for the server. You know, we had that incident last year where we had that 0-day vulnerability where we had to hurry up and apply a patch. Now those types of things are going to be out of our hands and with Microsoft, which is going to free up the expense of the overtime or, you know, having to work with a third-party vendor. It really is going to over time. This is definitely more cost-effective than what we're doing right now.
Okay.
So that'll help with your staffing issue. Then you wouldn't have to hire additional people like we've had to do lately.
Yeah, this is definitely going to take some load off of my staff. This is going to be good for us. And especially if we have, you know, with cybersecurity, the way that it is right now, this is going to benefit us immensely with my staff. Yep.
Any other council members while we're on this topic? Okay.
Yeah, I like 360. I use it all day.
Great.
Oh, all right.
So just two more things to go over real quick. Hosted Citrix. So we all know that during the time of the pandemic and everyone was working remotely, one of the things that we had to do is we had to log into Citrix to be able to get to our desktops. Right now we have 4 servers that help us to do that. My goal is to get into hosted Citrix. That would take us to the cloud. It would eliminate 4 of our servers. And like I said before, now we're eliminating, you know, the cooling, the rack, making sure that we have the patches, making sure that we have the updates. It would allow us for a more seamless remote access now that we're seeing more virtual meetings and ways that we can work from home. Or in this case, we have our vendors that have to access us remotely, or our outside auditors, or even our police car fleet. They use Citrix to gather information and data. So what I'm hoping to do is virtualize this environment, and that would be a cost of $85,000, but it's over 3 years. And then in 3 years, I would have to renew that. And if you look at the amount of work that we put into the Citrix environment we have right now, and you know, because you've all used it, when you log in, this is way more seamless, all in the cloud. I think this is a great number, and I'm still working on this number, but that would allow us to have better accessibility from our remote locations to go get into our network.
Can you repeat that number again?
I have the last quote I got from them, and I'm still working on it, was 85,000, and that's over 3 years. So just in housing the 4 servers, and like I said, the cooling and the maintenance and making sure we have connections and making sure there's a fail safe and just in that alone, we're there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think it's a need for remote access for our employees. So,
and then, you know, it goes back also to providing continuity in government. You know, we do the best we can with the staff that I have, but now you have a dedicated team of people with the hosted Citrix, with the Office 365 that are there. It's resources that we can't leverage. So going to the cloud with Citrix, going to the cloud with Office 365, you know, we're going to capitalize on the benefits across all kinds of platforms.
okay. Is there another item you said, Lisa?
Just one last thing, our Genetech server. Our Genetech server,
We lost you, Lisa. You're muted. Or just no sound. You're not muted, but just
Yeah,
no.
I lost her too.
okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I had some kind of interference. So our Genetech server is the server that stores our video, our cameras, and connect back to our Genetech server. That's how we manage our cameras and our video environment. Right now, our server is about 100 terabytes. We add about 10 additional a year. In order to follow some of the mandates with our records, there's video that we have to keep longer. For example, one example would be like our cell blocks or our property room, or if we have requests for video that we have to save or archive video, we need more storage for our camera environment. Right now we're at 100 terabytes. This would take us to 350. It's at a cost of about $40,000, and that would allow us for a little bit more growth with our camera and our video environment.
Good. Okay, so
That's
those
all I
are
have.
coming down the road, and you're asking for the use of the American Rescue Fund. So,
Yes,
all
because
right.
I did not budget for the 3 items that I covered just now. I did not budget for in this year's budget.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, we understand. And the resolution was passed stating American Rescue Funds would be used, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, anybody have questions for Lisa before she leaves us for now?
Great. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lisa.
Bye.
Okay, next we have Chief of Police Brian Gould. Brian, you still there?
I am. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So thank you very much for the chance to present to the board regarding the American Rescue Plan Act. We all have seen the headlines about how violent crime and crime in general has increased since the pandemic. And in my memo to the board, I did include some examples of what our officers are seeing on the streets. We are definitely have seen an increase in certain crimes and certain types of calls for service since the pandemic, and they are challenging. The President of the United States has made mention about using some of the ARPA funds to help combat some of the crime. I appreciate all the support the board has given the police department, and we've done pretty good just sticking within our budget. However, there are a couple things that I just wanted to throw out as requests that are definitely have changed since the budget was developed and are an effect of COVID and the pandemic. The first one, as you guys know, the Office of Emergency Management has been moved underneath the command of the police department. Part of that move over has involved moving their office from the ice rink to the police station. I was able to take one of our rooms that we had set up for some training that we weren't using anymore because the technology for that training has become outdated, and I put them in that room downstairs. It's great because unlike the ice rink, our building has complete backup power. So in the event of emergency, their office does still remain energized. We have already worked together on many things, including the distribution of the COVID tests. We know that the Office of Emergency Management has been the clearinghouse for the linkage between our town and the county when it comes to supplies. During the move, their desks that they were working off of were so old that they basically fell apart when they were tried to move. There's been very little investment in that office over the past, safe to say, probably 20 years. And I think the time has come due to the increase in workload as a result of the pandemic and the fact that we're in a new space with them, that we get them that office up to speed with some new office furniture and some IT, such as a projector or a screen type of setup. We brought in a company to give us a quote. Furniture wise, we're close to 9,000. We have to, that room has a rubber floor on it because we're using it for training. So we'd like to carpet it. And then just some, a little bit extra for some unexpected technology costs. So I just put a number on that of $20,000. Would get them definitely up to speed, and everything would be much better than it was before the start of the pandemic. One of the other things that we saw coming into this year with our budget, we've had a hard time budgeting for our undercover cars. Our detectives all have undercover cars. I know cars have always been an issue with the board as far as funding of vehicles and the public, looking closely on this. Most of our unmarked and undercover cars are they're reaching 8 to 10 years old. Although they don't have a ton of mileage on them, which is good for resale value if we get rid of them. They really aren't. A 10-year-old car in Buffalo just doesn't hold up too well. I had originally planned on using some of our budgeted money this year to replace some of these cars along with some of our asset forfeiture funds. Asset forfeiture are funds that we take and confiscate as a result of proceeds from a crime. Those funds have definitely decreased since the start of the pandemic. So we just don't have the cushion that we would normally have in that account. And the other thing that we are up against, and anybody who's bought a car since the start of the pandemic knows this, the same car that we bought before the pandemic for $29,000, we went out to a statewide bid for that same vehicle, and it's almost $39,000, so almost a $10,000 increase in it. I'm requesting $200,000 to replace 5 of those cars, and that will put us in good shape for the next probably 6, 7, 8 years on our undercover cars. The last proposal I threw on here for the board to consider, it's not really something that was budgeted for that we're not going to be able to make happen. It's something that's always been around. We had plans drawn. For those of you who don't know, we have an outdoor shooting range at the end of Scott Place up behind the airport. It's a very state-of-the-art, beautiful shooting range. The Erie County Central Police Services Academy shoots there. Buffalo Police use our range now. West Seneca is using our range. We do bring in some income for the range, and it's used year round. We have been able to develop that property with using approximately $1 million from our asset forfeiture fund over the years. The grand plan for that property also included a building. Right now, if you were to go out there, yesterday, there were officers out there shooting. They're using portable toilets, the porta johns, and even in the middle of the winter out there, just because we don't have any building. There's been some work done out there. The sanitary sewer has been extended into our property already to support a building with bathrooms. We have a set of plans that have already been drawn. What I'm hearing, and I haven't talked to engineering or anybody to get a more solid number, but in the area of $300,000 would allow us to build a classroom out there. As I mentioned, when we moved the Office of Emergency Management over here, we did give up one of our training rooms to make that happen. By having a building out there, we're not looking for anything fancy, just a building with a classroom, 2 bathrooms, a little bit of storage, and an office area for our range sergeant who oversees that area. It was just one of those things that we've never been able to save up enough in our asset forfeiture to make happen, especially now since the pandemic is affecting the funds that we see coming in through that account. And if there were funds available, this would be a great time to make that final step happen out there. The total of my requests that I put together, just over 500,000, just around 2% of the total amount. We pride ourselves on being financially responsible here and being able to get the job done, and we will. But I think everybody in our community feels the effect of the pandemic when it comes to law enforcement and crime. We're seeing recruitment and retention being a challenge for us. I had 4 retirements last week. I think investing a small portion of the American Rescue Plan Act money in the field of law enforcement and public safety on our end would be a reasonable request. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chief Gould before he goes? Comments? Nothing? Okay. Thank you, Chief, for being here.
Thank you for your
Good
consideration.
ideas.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye. Okay. Can we have Rick Coburn? What were you going to talk about for today?
I'm sorry, Diane. Thank you. We have a couple things that were already brought up. One was from Lisa, and she already talked about the resolution that was approved in the fall. We just got the final numbers from our Oracle for the program, which we will be finalizing contract. Lisa's already approved it. And the funding that I actually identified for that included a lot more involvement with migration of our existing BIS system into the Oracle system, along with our intended cloud coverage for access for all devices within our system to allow the community, along with all developers, to get into our system, along with realtors to find out historical records from parcels. So it's trying to create a program that's much more user-friendly from the community. That was, from my understanding right now, it's $545,000 total in the package for all the included services that they will provide over the course of 2 years, that is. And then our licensing will be individually per user after that. The other information I had that I was interested in was also things that were brought up through Mark Crystal's last proposal for our consent order in our pilot program. And Mark elaborated on what was involved with his side of the construction cost of doing all the lateral connections and the tap-in connections. Our part of the program was involved with the private side inspections of the homes, along with the remediation costs associated with those requirements based on assessment information that said they needed to do corrections in their home. The RFPs that's described in this was going into 2,200 homes, anticipating 70% or 65% of the homes requiring remediation, and possibly providing some funding available for private side access to take care of those remediations, because Mark might do his whole program from the one side and in the street, which is multi-millions of dollars. This is going to have no effect if we don't get inside the homes and get remediation to be completed. So we have a full pilot study of elimination of all I&I inflows and infiltrations into the system. The costs associated with that, including all assessment information of accessing the homes, remediation work being done by plumbers that through the RFPs to disconnect all those infiltration aspects, was approximately 1.38 million. That was sent along with a breakdown sheet that kind of described individually areas that would be required part of the programming.
That was in Mark Crystal's spreadsheet last time?
It was, Mark had included some of that information in those funding. It wasn't specifically broken out exclusively what we would be providing along with what third party or an outsourcing company from engineering. So Mark was including some of that information. So there might be 2 areas that might have been covered, but I couldn't be clear because I didn't get a copy or a complete breakdown. And Mark might elaborate specifically what he had to set aside for third-party inspection agencies to assist in this program.
Mark,
But
are
if
you Mark, Crystal, Pat, Bowen, one of you? Do you want to jump in about that?
Yeah, we're both there, Dinah, as is Paul P. with us. Everything that we presented last week was for construction purposes only. None of it was for inspection. We've had multiple meetings over the years on that, Diane, so everything in our end is construction side only. Nothing for inspection, if that clears things up, okay?
So that 1.38 would cover the inspections that the DEC wants us to do.
Yes, Diane, it would cover the inspections. I also have broken in there some costs related to some RFPs for plumbers or outside sources that could be included in some funding if that's available through this program. Right now, we know that we've been challenged with trying to find funding for private side access to do the remediation. So we can tell them what's wrong with it, but if we don't have immediately fix it, close it out to do 2,500 homes, this is going to be comprehensive. We only have a year to 2 to try to eliminate all of it. It's not a 50% success rate. In order for this pilot program to work, before we go into the other 90% of all the homes, we need to know that once we complete our use on the side of Mark's job and we complete our side inside the homes to make sure it's completely done to well above 95%, we won't know the success of this whole program to find out how we have to continue going forward with all the inside home inspections and related disconnections of all the private side infiltration or inflows. So that's why I put this in there, that if we can't have money to affordability for the community to use, I don't know how we're going to get in there and force compliance when they're challenged with the cost of these remediations. So that's why I added that in. Hopefully this funding can be used to help private residents access some funding to take care of their problems.
We might have to establish like a special fund for them to apply for it if they, they'd have to be a designated group like low to mod type. Right, Brian Krause? I think that was one of the things that you were going to assist a group of residents that needed assistance. That probably would be the way to go, right? You there, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, that he brought up, it's not new to us hearing it, although it is not on that list that I sent you guys. So,
okay. How much? There's 1.38 was for the inspections only, right?
No, Diane, about 900,000 was for RFPs to do the 1,800 remediations that we anticipate out of the 2,400. So again, that was broken out. That could be, we're talking about $400,000 for the inspections alone.
And then the 900 for the remediation.
Right.
It's a touchy subject, and Brian will tell you because it's giving money to private.
No, I totally understand. That's why I'm hoping that at some point the disenfranchised communities that are poor and how that might be spun to understand. We're trying to do a pilot program that's going to help the whole community once we get a determination of its success, whether eliminating floor drains or eliminating some pumps. Well, we know that our downspouts, what that's going to do. before we go to the other 90% of the town to figure out what we have to make them do following this pilot program. Again, that was me just hoping that we had an answer to when we go into a home, it's going to cost you this much to do it. Here's the contractors to do it. You might be able to defer it, get some money. I don't know. That's the only reason I brought it up, because this funding seems like it's trying to help specifically the idea of flooding and the environmental impacts that were part of our consent order. But
On the public side, not, it's,
Right.
it's on
I
the
get it.
public. So I think we're gonna have to look more into that.
Yep. And the last 4 items I had were more along planning and understanding some of the concerns we have going forward. One of them was we're a part of our CEC Clean Energy Community, which our designation has been established, and we did receive our $250,000 grant. As we go forward, a couple things, and everybody's talked about the street light acquisition and stuff. We finished the RFP. Dan has completed it. He's got all the documentation from 17 about the cost of what it would be to acquire the lighting, which I'm sure has changed since then. That this number that we originally got from the NIPA study from Wendell is not something that we're looking to tackle as far as our department, but we did have all that documentation, and Dan did work and put together an RFP through UBRI to request a company to come in and be part of the acquisition of those streetlights.
Well,
But
all
that
right,
typical-
so I think that we're ahead of ourselves because Pat Bowen was working on getting the final.
Right. I agree. I know it's coming through engineering. Dan was
Yes.
just asked through Camille to put the RFP together and
Yes,
gather all
we
that
were, but then we
documentation.
have to, we're waiting for Pat
Yep.
Bowen because you have to decide on each, the brightness. I mean, Pat, do you want to go through that? The head, all that, that's all going to be part of the RFP to do from start to finish. Acquiring the lights, negotiating with NICEAG and National Grid, all that. Pat, do you want to tell us where you are with that?
It's going to be very complicated. I haven't had the time yet to start going through that. I've got 2 reports I need to get to the DEC before I can start on that. And I would ask that, because I don't think that's ARPA related, that we put that discussion out for another day.
So,
Well, Brian, I don't think that's eligible for ARPA funding, is it?
I mean, that's debatable. The way the new final rule is written, it may be, but when it comes down to, we know that street lighting project will pay for itself. So to me, it seems like we have higher needs than that for this funding, for the ARPA funding.
yeah,
So,
I agree, and Pat's correct. I think they checked into it and it didn't qualify with the American Rescue Funds. However, it will pay for itself. So, Rick, we're working on it. We're waiting for Pat, but it is pretty complicated since we're, National Grid owns some of these lights. We do, and so does NICEAG. Sometimes we own the pole only, and it just is a pretty complicated process. But it's in Pat's hands now. But anything else, Rick?
Yeah, the last one, Diane, was part of our smart communities is understanding potentially a GIS for the area around the Galleria Mall, based on all the lost revenues that they've taken on, along with the lost revenues that we've had through obviously sales. That monies could be earmarked to help facilitate the Walden Galleria specifically, or that area around the Walden, to redevelop and try to reimagine themselves going forward. We just had a meeting with them last week about a potential housing complex on their parcel, but it's not properly zoned, and we have to do a lot of investigative work to find out whether or not it could work, including a downstream analysis and a lot of the infrastructure that we would have to investigate in order for them to be able to do those types of things. So we had a draft GIS that was provided through CPL a year ago, potentially when they were doing services for our department in planning, that when we were negotiating or conversing with Walden Galleria when they were closed down through the pandemic, that they realized they would have to be able to market to other agencies that could help develop the mall property. So this GIS is a generic environmental impact study that might allow the Thruway Mall Plaza, the Galleria Mall Plaza, along with the Walden corridor and the Genesee corridor, as being identified of how we could actually do some preliminary planning in order for them to come in and offer up all, development opportunities. And we've been working with CEDC. Paul Leone's been helping me a little bit with this and trying to direct this accordingly with Christina Groff, also the understanding the value of trying to do this for the mall properties and actually all of the retail areas within the mall area, Malden. But that was my last one.
You have an estimate of what you were?
Yeah, it was actually $480,000. We actually had an estimate draft from CPL, but we never pursued it once we kind of no longer were using them as a council or a planner. That was just preliminary back in the end of 2020 and beginning 2021.
Okay. Any council members have any questions for Rick Colburn? Okay, Rick, thank you. Gives us
Thank you.
an idea of what we're talking about here. So then Mark Crystal and Paul and Pat Bowen, we wanted to finish the discussion of the capital projects and what we need to use ARPA for.
I'm yes. Good. Yeah. Yeah, honestly, Diane, we went through that stuff last time. I don't know if Brian wants to chime in at this time. Brian Krause that is, and kind of go through his sheet. His sheet that he sent to you guys has everything we had listed on there last time. I'd be more than happy to go through it with you again. I just didn't know if this time it would make sense to kind of marry everything together.
Okay, Brian Krause, you do have some good figures here, so.
All right, yeah, I mean, I can, I'm kind of prepared to give like a little bit of history on ARPA and how we can spend this money, try to do this really quick. And I do apologize, I've been working on that list for all week long, and obviously I still didn't get everything because I don't have any Rick stuff, and it's a moving target. But this is an extremely important process, and it's very important that you guys at least see the whole request list and determine, what our priorities are and what's been committed already. So the list that I sent you guys is pretty important to go through, but let me just, step back real quick and talk about the ARPA in general, So all this ARPA money came out in 2021, and it actually, there was an interim final rule that they put out, and that was what everybody was kind of making their plans with, and it was much more restrictive, and they were looking for comments from anybody who was getting money. I mean, this is nationwide, obviously. So many municipalities got back to them, gave them their feedback, and they just issued the final rule in January of 2022. And so that is amazingly here I printed it out. It's like friggin' 400 pages and 427 pages long. So what I've been doing is working through summaries and different things like that. But so, to say anybody's an expert on this is a far cry, I would say. We're all trying to learn this as best we can. And the good news is that a lot of the interim final rule, it got changed to be less restrictive in the final rule. So that's kind of a good thing. They do have what they call 4 categories of spending, but the one category is kind of broken down into 3 different categories as well. So we did our first quarterly report, which was due at the end of January. With that, I sent you guys with this email that I sent you. There was that Appendix C that shows the expenditure categories. And the first category, well, in general, it's called Support COVID-19 Public Health and Negative Economic Impacts on your community. So that's broken down into 3 different areas. One's public health, and there's 12 categories in the public health one, talking mostly about protective equipment and vaccinations and testing, things that we don't really get into all that much. The next one was negative economic impacts, household assistance, unemployment, job training assistance, things along those lines. The third one is services to disproportionately impacted communities. All these, they have, there's 16 categories in that full categories or expenditure category as well. And then it comes down to, so those are three of the that support the first category. And then they have what is called premium pay for eligible workers performing essential work. That ability is out there. I do not have any awareness of many municipalities using that to pay eligible workers. I've heard of Erie County and Niagara County. I've not heard of any local smaller governments, towns or villages or anything like that. There is a request from one of our unions related to that on this list. The third category is investing in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. Obviously, we got lots of sewer and drainage issues, and we certainly could utilize much of our spending there. And then finally there's a section called revenue replacement. And that's, you can use this funding to provide government services. And that's what this changed, I think, quite a bit, where it just is a very general term, government services up to the amount of our revenue lost due to the pandemic. So, obviously we provide many different types of government services. And I think if it's in our realm of normal services, I think we can kind of use this money related to that up to our revenue calculation. Now, the revenue calculation, it can be done annually. So the very first calculation was done, they compare 2020 to 2019. And with the documentation they provided, our calculation originally was at like 9.8 million. And now they changed the percentage from 4.1% to 5.2% in this final rule as well. That gives us even more usage, up to $10.8 million of revenue replacement. So that's good news, because that category has streamlined reporting requirements. I know I've talked about this in the past, where reporting wise, those first three categories, there's lots of hoops to jump through, lots of documentation to obtain and supply, versus the revenue replacement and use towards our normal government services. That's a lot more streamlined, a lot less restrictive requirements for us to report. To put it in perspective, we got to report the spending quarterly for the next 5 years. So this is a total new process that's being thrown more or less on the accounting department, I'm guessing. I don't know too many other people who would be able to do the reporting. So it's going to be a monumental task, not just for accounting, but for all the different departments that are involved in whatever services we're going to provide. The list that I provided you guys, again, is not complete. It was as comprehensive as I thought I had the information to this point. And if you look, our award is $25.3 million, a little bit more. And our requests on that requested spending on that list is $27.6 million, already $2.3 million larger than what we have. So that's why it's good that we're all looking at this and saying, okay, what's our priorities? Some of the items, if you have the list in front of you, and I apologize if you don't, There's some yellow items on there that are more or less already spent. We bought the sewer
Which
back.
attachment are we getting out of that? We're looking at a new attachment?
It's that ARPA project plan that I
Okay.
emailed you guys.
Yes. There were 3
okay.
attachments. That's what I was.
Yeah. So
Brian, would you like me to share that?
you're welcome to do that. Yeah, sure.
You want me to do that? It'll be easier for them to see what you're.
You want me to do it, and then I can kind of scroll through it as I do
Sure,
that.
I'll give you, absolutely. Where are you?
Okay, I got it. Are you guys seeing that screen?
Yes.
Okay, so these items that are in yellow, highlighted in yellow, are items that, you know, we've spent the sewer vector truck money. And there's items that are currently in the budget or we have already put on a voucher or on a resolution to spend the money. So garbage packer, there was a garbage packer budgeted for. We've talked about trying to get a second one to kind of get our fleet back to more of a serviceable fleet. There's a lot of old and a lot of repairs that have been being made to those. So ultimately that would be a good thing to try to get an additional packer. In the budget in 2022, these items for our computer IT area were included in the budget and to be funded with this ARPA funds. So what I did was, you know, there's a senior microcomputer support specialist for police. There's another one who's more general. Obviously there's costs related to them in 2022. I funded the full cost in 2022, but what I'm trying to do, being that they're an operating expense, I'm trying to kind of phase that in. So in 23, 24, 25, we go to 75%, 50%, 25%, and then ultimately back down that it would be our cost. So it's kind of a good way that we're able to implement it and then not pound the budget with all at once 100% of that cost. So those 2 senior microcomputer support specialists, we got computer hardware that was funded, the new cybersecurity costs, internet services, and other cybersecurity expenditures. And then this code enforcement is a lot of what Rick was talking about from our internal part-time wages that we were going to need some people to help support that effort. In the sewer district, we didn't necessarily budget for these and say it was going to be paid for ARPA, but the requests were in on the backhoe, the single axle dump truck, and the utility service truck for sewer maintenance. These next 4 items are what Lisa spoke of just recently earlier.
Okay.
So we won't spend any time on that. We have discussion of trying to bring an interim TCSU member, Paul, to help support these efforts on our various building upgrades and whatnot related to the ARPA funding. So there would be multi-year costs related to that. That's not written in stone, but obviously it's part of a plan right now. John Shashelski talked to us last meeting about a fuel tank. I believe that it could be included as part of that revenue replacement cost. So if we wanted to spend that $100,000, that's a potential. He also asked for 3 pickups with plow packages. These next items are related to what Mark Crystal had put together on the last meeting with the DEC consent order of $1 million. The sanitary sewer work pilot study, that's the public side of what Rick was just talking about with this new pilot study, 6.4 million. Upgrading to the sewer lift stations and the pump stations, 1.25. We got the existing, let's see here, more sewer work specific to those streets. More sewer work here as well with full road reconstructions for the sanitary and storm sewer upgrades. All these things are things that Mark just talked about us last time. So the woods neighborhoods, the Transit Hill, the issues that we're having there. Town Park, replacing asphalt walking paths and new central playground, as was talked about last time. The pools, that was debated. Paul talked about the electronic signs to report to the public what's going on in our various locations. We have different building items that actually this was on a resolution as well. The record center generator that we needed Nussbaumer to get some engineering drawing and specs related to that. Town hall generator, town hall HVAC, town hall windows. This is the there's a request for the premium pay. That's purely an estimate, but it's based on some decent numbers that I got out of payroll. There is the items that Chief Gould just spoke of, the three items right there. Next three are the police vehicles, the shooting range, and the emergency management office. And then finally on the list is, the fire district request for funding. And there really wasn't numbers attached to many of those items besides the defibrillator program. So, and, I did have discussions with our outside auditors to get their perspective on that. They feel like it could be done, but there's a lot of nuances related to it. And, with regard to those types of equipment purchases and things along those lines. There's thoughts of, if we did it, we may need to purchase the equipment ourselves and then gift it to the fire districts, something along those lines. So that's, obviously something to debate, but there's plenty of ways to spend the money in-house if we need to. We do, again, given things to the fire district will create many different reporting issues that will be challenging. And that's my total list right there right now.
Do you have a total amount?
Right down there is 27,596,000, called 27.6, 27.6 million, and that doesn't include the items that Lisa spoke about, the item that Rick just talked about, a couple items that Rick just talked about. So those items were another $2 million. So we're over by $4.3 million of asks.
That's a lot. Yeah. Okay. Well, and we still didn't hear from Councilmember Jasinski had wanted to talk to us about an idea also. So
Yes.
should we hear from him? Go ahead, Michael.
So, as all of this stuff is very important, I think we're losing sight of what's the most important thing, and that's human life. Last year, out of 64% of the drugs seized was fentanyl. That fentanyl is enough to kill 329 million people, hence the population of America. So the drug usage has gone up 49% from 2020, April 2020 to April 2021 has increased by 49%. The CDC says you're more likely to die from an accidental drug overdosed and dying in a car crash. So my feeling is that, you know, we had proposed to talk about this drug court clerk as a part-time position. I think we should use a small portion, a sliver of this to make it a full-time position, to be a liaison, to keep us in tune with these numbers, because, you know, at the end of the day, it's human life that's really the most important thing. And I think, you know, we were going to pay for half the salary anyways. We anticipated that. So the supplement may be, just using a rough number, $30,000. You know, if you did it over 10 years, that's $300,000. I think that's a small investment, you know, for our town to keep us current on the numbers, you know, that include this overdose mental health crisis. You know, in my opinion, it's the real crisis that's facing us as a nation as a whole. We're losing, you know, a lot of the society, you know. It's just something we really need to focus in on. And I think that it should have topped the list, because all those projects are very important, but nothing's more important than human life. And then, you know, those civil projects, that work will always be there. There'll always be that, but we won't always be there. So, you know, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we really need to focus in on this. I think, you know, we got enough people here on the town board that, you know, would agree that, you know, not enough's being done. You know, these facilities are popping up like Tim Hortons all over the place, but, you know, how do we gauge what's going on? How do we even know if anybody's, you know, doing a good job? So we need somebody in the town that, you know, holds their feet to the fire and reports back to us, because, you know, all these agencies, they're looking for funding and stuff. And, you know, and I'm on board with trying to do that. But unless we appoint somebody that really keeps us abreast of, you know, the current, you know, circumstances, you know, how are we ever going to know what's truly going on? And, you know what I mean? I found out stuff that I haven't heard from 10 years ago. You know, I'm finding stuff out now. I mean, we don't reach out to enough people. And I think that's a big problem. There's a lot of programs out there that it baffles me how many people don't even know about the resources that are available. I don't think we're touching enough people that really should, you know, be involved in this, because I think it takes all of us, really, because, you know, if we don't have human life, what good's everything else? You know, my speech is short and sweet, and I'd like to talk to some of the council members and continue to have the conversation, because, you know, this is something we really need to put a focus in on.
Michael, what is your plan? Like, how much do you think? You mentioned $30,000 a year for the drug coordinator, but this money does run out in 2026.
Okay, so, you know, if we escrowed that money for 5 years, we can at least appoint somebody with a contract of 5 years, because, you know, you're probably going to get somebody who's fresh out of college or something that, you know, it's not going to be a large paying job, but it'll be definitely good experience. And I think it'll have tangible stuff that they can relay to us in regards to this study. So even if we spent, shortened it, you know, I mean, $30,000 as a supplement to make this a full-time position, that's only $150,000. That's nothing.
But what do you do with the person after 2026?
Well, I mean, we can cross that bridge when we get to it.
Okay, and
I'm open to suggestions. I mean, this isn't just, I'm not trying to, brainchild, I'm not trying to put this together on my own. You know, I'm looking for the support of the rest of the council. I mean, I want this an all-inclusive thing. You know, I want everybody to have some say into it.
yeah, okay. I just thought you had some ideas on how to go about this. That's all I was asking.
Well, I'm learning each and every day. You know what I mean? I since I became council member, it opened a lot more doors as far as what resources are available that I didn't know as the common, person in the neighborhood. You know, now that I'm here, I'm finding out a lot more information. So, you know, and it shouldn't be that way. You know, people should be informed. And I think that's a big issue, is that, you know, people aren't being informed. They don't know what resources are necessarily there. I'm sure there's plenty of resources, but, you know, I'd say the vast majority of the population is unaware of the resources.
Okay, anything else, council member?
No, that's all I got.
Any other council members want to chime in?
Yeah, to the council member's point, you know, about his interest in using some of the funds for this. You take a look at the stats, the Cheektowaga police stats that were sent over by Chief Gould, and the overdose figures increased between 2019, 20, and 21, and so do the involuntary mental health transports. Over the last 3 years, there've been an increase over each year. Some of the other figures are flat. There's actually declines in some of this other stuff. So you look at the raw numbers, there's a need for it. And what I like about his approach here is that he's naming a program and he's got an idea of, here's something that's kind of in place already, and it can be bolstered a little bit more, supported a little bit more. So, I mean, we're getting closer to concretely funding something. I'm absolutely open to the idea. I'd like to hear from the court side what they're doing already, and how this would be a benefit to them, how they could put this to use if we were to go forward with it. But I'm absolutely open to going down this road and maybe putting some of the money into dealing with this.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Okay, Michael, thank you. Next, we'll talk to Mark Crystal and Paul Polarski. Am I missing anybody who wanted to present any ARPA idea? I see Carrie and Jill on.
Supervisor, I just wanted to make a quick mention. You and I spoke about this earlier in the week. Lighting for Dingens Park. It's possible to deal with that when we do the street lighting project, but maybe have that up for consideration as a dark horse possibility here. I know we have so many projects beyond the dollar amount, but I don't want to take that off the table right now because I think it's an important priority to get that taken care of.
Yeah, I think it is too. Yeah, so I was hoping we could include that in the whole LED light conversion, because if we put those lights in now through NYSEG, or I think NYSEG's that area, we're gonna have to buy them back somehow when we do the LED street light conversion. Brian Krause, I see are you there? You want to add anything?
Well, I mean, I appreciate what Brian's saying, and you know what, to that point, you know, this agenda here wasn't just ARPA, it's also capital project related. So I think some of the things, you know, that I think we need to make some decisions sooner rather than later are on some of the larger items that sewer related and like, you know, building related, because, you know, we can you know, bond for these longer term items. Obviously buildings, streets, you know, drainage, we've done that in the past. And, you know, Paul has identified a number of needs for the various buildings that exist. Brian Nowak just identified a need for that lighting. Obviously we know the street lighting was you know, that's hot and heavy on our agenda, that we'd like to try to get that done as well. And that's a very
well, let me go to Mark Crystal then and Paul Polarski, because we have to identify, the board has to give them direction for this year, what to get started on, because we kind of felt rushed. So that's why I called for this meeting, so we could get going. Do you want to add anything, Mark?
Yeah, Diane. Yeah, thank you. Oh, yeah, I'm going to let Paul go first, and I'll come back to my end, because to Brian's point, there are some time-sensitive things that we kind of need to, you know, make a decision on. Not that anything else we talked about today is not important, but we do have some time constraints that we are obligated by. So that being said, I'll let Paulie go, then I'll come back on the backside, okay?
Is it, yes, Kim, is there a document that Paul gave you to put up on the screen? Or Mark Crystal, can you put it up? I don't know.
Yeah, Kim, yeah, I think Kim does have it. She did acknowledge she had it. Here it comes.
Good,
So, you know, I've
perfect.
seen this before. The only thing that's changed on there, and I should point out too, Brian Kraus, thanks for putting some of the things I had on there, and not to add fuel to the fire here, but there's still a handful of things that are absent on here that were on the original list. So that brings that number up even higher than it already is. So, you know, as a board and as a town, there's some hard decisions to make in terms of what we decide as a town to go forward with for ARPA-related projects. But Brian just hit on it too, Brian Kraus. He said, you know, we come up with these capital improvements, and there's a capital improvements board. We've talked, you know, I can show you the last one that we did, you know, dating back, you know, in the last 3 years pre-COVID. And there's still some things on this list that need to be taken care of. It's routine maintenance of our buildings. And we've gotten a lot of work done over the years. But if ARPA wasn't available to the town, these are still issues to the town. So if we can utilize ARPA spending, that's great, but I don't want to lose focus on the fact that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done on these buildings. So what's changed in what you currently see, these cute little red X's on the left and right-hand side of the spreadsheet. You can't see it on the right because well, at least we can't from where we're sitting because the council members are actually appearing on that. But the red X's would indicate what I perceive as important things that really need to be looked at. I did mark, like for instance, number 25 is the window replacement. Up until a conversation with Brian Kraus earlier this afternoon, I did not know if that was ARPA fundable, but apparently it is. So we can cross that off the list. But just to mimic what Mark Crystal had said, a lot of these things are very important to us as a town, to us as a department, but probably not as important as a lot of things that Mark's trying to press on for. With that said, I presented to the board, there's 3 resolutions I'm hoping to get through at the February 8th meeting. And I think you'd all seen it. I sent an email out, just a brief description. 2 are ARPA related. One's a generator for the record center, which is currently on the list, item number 16. And then it's the standalone generators, which Kim, if you can scroll down, it'll be at the bottom. And then the third one is the elevator in the front entrance at Alexander, which is funded courtesy of Monica Wallace and the CDBG. Yeah, it'd be item number 51 is the standalone. So those are going out for bid. They're ready to go. These are these like projects that we had planned for regardless. And fortunately, ARPA came to light. So we are able to use that funding for this cause. So we'll go out to bid with it, give them a few weeks to bid it, and then we'll keep you in the loop moving forward. But again, not to bore you again with getting into it. I haven't changed much on the list like I had mentioned, but again, all these things are important. Brian, like I said, I think on your list did not include a few items at the main pump station, a few items at the sewer department, the comfort station at Sigelmeyer Park, which we spoke of last time. But I mean, by all means, it's a difficult decision for you guys to make, but make it quick. So I guess that's all I got from my end. I'll pass it over to Mark. If you have any questions, please feel free.
I'm just going to throw it back to Paul real quick too, going back to not only ARPA, but capital. I guess the other question is the items on this list that are not ARPA-able, do we want to revisit what Brian said? Maybe a building improvement bond or some other form of funding to get dollars to knock these things off on this list. So that's another piece of the puzzle I think we need to follow up here down the road as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and just briefly touch on that. So Brian Kraus, in the past, I think we bonded monies. I think it was like $1 million a year that we bonded the last time. Fortunately for ARPA, that puts us well below that range for the balance of these jobs that I've, put red X's on. Again, my personal opinion. I don't know if there's monies available without bonding. It doesn't need to be this year. I'd like to get the window, I'd like to get some of these jobs rolling because it takes a little bit of time to get these projects going and to formulate a set of detailed drawings and some specs. And again, there's a lot on our plate. I mean, I'm not saying everything's going to get done in 2022 or 23, but We'd like to get rolling on the ones that we perceive as important.
Well, can I say, and maybe we can get some input from all the council members. Looking at this list, I think we have to, and we've been talking about the HVAC at Town Hall. There is no filtration in those old units.
Correct.
So I think that alone is a priority, and that elevator replacement for 125,000. And that generator. Again, we had problems today. And once Town Hall goes down, there isn't much power for anything else to happen there. Does anybody else have any input on that?
Yeah, I think the HVAC for the town hall should be on the top of the list too.
Thank you, council member.
If you get into how to control costs in the long run, and you look at what's driving inflation right now, energy cost is right at the top. If we got drafty windows in the town hall, it seems like that should be a priority. I'm all for dealing with the HVAC, but if I were forced to pick between one or the other, I would go for the windows over the HVAC. As important as the HVAC is, if we can do both, let's do it. But let's make sure the windows are up there. If they're drafty, because we know how cold that building can be, make that a little more energy efficient. That'll help us in the long run controlling our costs.
I agree with you to an extent, Brian, but here's the thing. Cold air infiltration is actually healthy. It's the stagnant air in the building through these old units that I guarantee if we swabbed them probably have 20 different kinds of bacteria and diseases on them. So the infiltration of the cold air, it might not be the most comfortable thing, but it's actually good. You want to constantly introduce outdoor air. So it may not be the most comfortable thing. I'll agree to that, but we always want to, have cold air. We want to take the air out of the building and bring the fresh air in. So maybe we need to do like an ERV system, an energy, recovery ventilator that, tempers the air and it constantly is introducing fresh air. I mean, those systems are super cheap. I mean, it'd be a fraction of the cost, to replace, say, an RTU or those heat pumps we have in some of these offices. So, fresh air is good, but we need to temper that air that comes into the building to make it comfortable. So
you're saying we should do the HVAC before we do the window replacement?
Yeah, I mean, my personal professional opinion, I've done HVAC 30 years of my life. Replacing, the windows is, a great idea, but it's not really bad that we get some infiltration of fresh air into the building because, you have that stagnant air and all those HVAC units in the building. All they're doing is just reproducing and mixing up the bad air.
I agree, and that whole system in the council chambers is horrible.
I agree.
Over and over again. And the offices. So
I think that's a priority for sure.
But I would consider both of them, the HVAC and the window replacement.
Yeah, agreed. Because we want to save energy at the end of the day.
Yeah, and looking at it is, the investment up front in the windows is 180, and it's something that'll take, it can pay for itself in part through some of these energy savings, but the HVAC has got to get done. And we know how much of a problem that's been in town hall and how old that is and the kind of work that needs to be done. So,
right.
I'm all for putting HVAC, right near the top of the list too. I just don't want to see the windows be the thing that falls off.
Oh, I know. I agree with you.
It should go hand in hand.
Yes, I agree. So if we could, give Paul direction to start on those two things also.
I agree.
Guys, let's go back in for a second, if you don't mind. Excuse me. Kim, can you scroll down and just get all the yellow on the screen? Yeah, thank you. So, and we'll talk about the balance, but just back to town hall and in concert with Councilmember Jasinski had mentioned. Once we replace the windows, then we do lose that inadvertent infiltration that we're currently getting. So I think one needs to be in concert with the other. Once we put new windows in, now all of a sudden we're weather tight, and the building currently does not have adequate ventilation, not even close. So if I put a bid together for the HVAC, that's almost a definite. This project started some time ago, as I mentioned before with Council Member Kaminsky and I, and it was only council chambers, but the more contractors we brought in for their input, and there were a bunch of different ideas on how to address it, and it just grew because that building is unique to itself. It's quite the structure, and there's a lot of brick, there's a lot of masonry inside that building that separate current rooms, and the rooms are small and they're tight and they're low ceilinged, and there's a lot going on in there that really needs to be researched further.
The money the town would save on some of this inverted technology that they have out there for the HVAC would pay for those windows tenfold.
Correct.
Good. All right. So I think we all agree to take those two hand in hand, correct?
Yes.
Right. Those are priorities. Any other council members?
I agree. Both.
Thank you, Chris Adamsack, Councilmember Adamsack. Okay, so Paul, you got your direction for those two, and then what else did you think we should?
Well, I think what needs to go hand in hand with that. It's a guess for a number for the asbestos, and it's just it's item number 21, which is just a couple above the elevator replacement there.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to come across that as we're boring and kind of inventing new ways to vent this building. That building in the past, we have not done the building as a whole. We've done certain offices and found that there was some presence of it, although we have not disturbed it. There is presence of it within the building. So that's a fluffy number in there. That cost is always a bit of a surprise when it comes to fruition. So I would suggest that be part of the deal as well.
I'm good with that. Anybody else have any issues with that?
Then I'm afraid of the cost.
Yeah, because we're going to be opening up walls if we're doing all that work. So you're right.
Okay, and then just a couple more things, if you don't mind, just taking a minute. So the comfort station, I think Linda, you mentioned you wanted to see that, and that was supposed to be originally covered under the monies that we had currently lost from the county for the building museum, and it's no longer happening. And I think this has been on the list, on the capital list for several years. Is that something that we want to consider? Is that a back burner thing? Is that something, a capital that doesn't involve ARPA now? I mean, just want to get your feedback.
Paul?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it was, I don't know. I talked to Tim Saturday evening, and according to him, that money is still there. But I don't know if we can access it right now. So there still is a possibility that we can get that money from Timmy, but I'm not 100% sure. Neither is he.
Okay. Is that something that you feel comfortable putting under ARPA, or you think maybe there's more important places to spend it?
Well,
I mean, I know it's been something people have been wanting for 25 years already, but.
I mean, any other council, I mean, from all the presentations today, we have a lot of issues. I think that's just a luxury, is to have a comfort station.
Yeah, I agree with you, Supervisor. I mean, I thought we weren't making decisions tonight. We are just taking it all in. And
yeah, you're right. We are. Right. But we have to, what we have to do is give direction for the capital projects anyway. And we can give the final one on Tuesday. I can put another discussion item on, but I just kind of wanted to get everybody's feel. And we have a few days till Tuesday, and then we'll make the final decision. Is that good with everybody?
Yeah, it works for me. I mean, for me, I just want to take it all in, look at it, lay out. And I mean, I'm hearing some needs versus wants, and some are luxuries, some are, we need to address this right away. So I just want to take it all in today and then come up with some decisions later on.
Yeah, so let's take it all in and then prioritize for Paul to do his list. This year, get started on a few things, and then let's go into Mark Crystal's. Are there any other questions on this list? Again, take it in. We want to do some decision making Tuesday, if that's okay with everyone.
Okay.
and bring your ideas forward so we can get going on that. All right, Mark Crystal, do you want to get your infrastructure up on the screen, Kim? And
Sure, you have that, Kim, right?
I do. Just give me one moment here. I'm pulling it off
Certainly.
your
Thank you.
email.
there was a
Oh,
new
well,
email, right?
Yeah, there was one from this today, Diane, yes.
Okay.
So while Kim's pulling that up, to back up, to kind of expand on Brian Krause's point earlier, every year at this time, usually a little before this time, we always talk about our infrastructure needs. And at last meeting, I sent you guys a bunch of attachments, one of which was our proposed infrastructure improvement program, which kind of summarized the year 2016 through the year 2025. So on average, we're usually bonding anywhere from, $3.5 to $4.5 million to do these improvements that we're mandated to do, especially now with the consent order. So again, I know there was a lot of good needs today, a lot of things out there, none more important than the other, but these needs that I'm going to talk about now are time sensitive. So I just want to keep that in perspective, because normally at this time of year in February, early March, Brian will be putting out bond notices so we can get the dollars in place so we can start rolling on construction for the season. And I know it's funny talking about construction when it's snowing outside right now, but that's where we're here at. So if you look at the calendar, I mean, we make decisions on the 8th, that's great. It gives me then the month of March to get bids out, which means we're not opening till the end of March, early April, and awarding contracts, and then we've lost construction time already. So again, not to try to force some decisions here, but if we can get some as no later than Tuesday, that'd be helpful for our end. On this sheet here that, Kim, I sent you one today, Kim. That's the one from last week. Do you have the one from today, Kim?
Oops. Kristen.
Yeah.
That look right, Mark?
Yeah, but there should be 2 pages that I can, yeah. So there's 2 pages, and actually it's really good because I'm going to start with this page anyways. Okay, so there should be 2 pages of that document, Ken. So on this page, again, working backwards from a capital perspective, I just wanted to just review real quick again. These are jobs that are in queue anyway. So if we start at the bottom, you have the sanitary sewer work related to DEC consent order. We are under construction on the phase 7 bid for 5.1 million. We're going to hopefully complete that this season. That is for lining of sewer shed number 4. We are also under construction of phase 6 of sanitary sewer manhole rehab, and that is also under construction. We bid that last year, and we're expected to complete that this season as well, and that's 1.2 million. The next 2 pieces of our ongoing program are the lining of sheds number 9 and 10, which would be phase 8 of our sanitary sewer lining, which is approximately 6.1 million, and phase 7 of sanitary sewer manhole rehab in shed 4, which is approximately 1.1 million. Those are all projects that are either going to happen or are going to be out the bid here in the next few months. Good thing with those is those are all funded. Those are funded through grants that we had received over the last couple of years. But as you can see by the dollar figure there, that's a lot of work already that's in queue that we need to prioritize. The other thing on this list is parks upgrades, and courtesy of the CDBG office, there's $300,000 there that Rachel's working on that should be coming down the queue here hopefully soon. And that's to do some work improvements in Cedar Grove Park, which is replacing an aging playground, adding a new shelter, replacing and upgrading the ring sidewalks that loop the whole inside of that park, and upgrading the sport courts in that park. So that's about 300,000 that is earmarked for that. I talked to Rachel last week and she's working on that. We should be hearing any day on that if that's good to go. And then the other piece of the puzzle here, which we're not listing in ARPA, is our annual. And what I mean by annual is, again, it's in that handout. It's something we bond every year. We've done it for the last 15 years. It's on our list to bond this year anyways, is our annual Highway Department road resurfacing program, where we submit the plan to the board for our annual mill and overlay. These are on streets that either already have received improvements or don't need any improvements as far as infrastructure, water mains, sewer mains, gas mains. We coordinate that with other utilities to make sure once we rehab our street, no one else is going to come tear it up in the immediate future. That's about 1.5. That's not covered anywhere. So that's something we would need to bond. And I wanted to bring that to the board's attention that is an animal here that, you know, Brian's going to have to get some bonding for because we don't have that money in queue. But that's about 15.5 million of capital projects non-related to ARPA that again, that are in queue ready to go with the exception of the paving dollars. Again, the paving plan I'm working on as we speak to put that together. You know, traditionally we don't start that till the end of April anyways. But in order to get the bond notes and resolution done, you know, I don't mean to speak for Brian, but it's usually a 50 to 60 day process to get that money in hand. That's 2 months. You look at the calendar, that's a decision that we need to make here sooner than later to make that timeline work. So that's, you know, working backwards, that's the capital portion of what we have for this upcoming season at 15.5 million. And then Kim, if you can go to the other slide then on that same document.
Are you talking about a spreadsheet or are you talking about the other document in the email?
Actually, scroll up in that spreadsheet, Kim. It should be the upper part of that spreadsheet. You go to lines like 1, 2, 3. There we go. Yep, perfect. Thank you. Yep. And then that's basically the same spreadsheet we shared last week. I just striked out a couple things on the spreadsheet as far as needs, but everything on the spreadsheet Brian mentioned in his early spreadsheet report to the board. That's why we kind of thought it would be good for Brian to go first to kind of spell everything out there. But everything on here, and again, I'm not trying to say that these are more important than other needs that we discussed today, but these are time sensitive. Everything listed on there, item number 1, the associated repairs and restoration work to support the DEC work in sheds 4, 8, 9, and 10. That basically supports the work that we just discussed on the previous page of $15 million. We've annually been bonding that support work over the last few years. That's dollars we need to make sure we keep on time with the other projects. The second piece of here for 6.4 million, once again, is the DEC consent order corrective action plan pilot study that we need to do in sewer shed number 3. Once again, that's mandated by the DEC and we are already on the clock for this work. And we need to get this project moving because again, they're expecting reports back to them. We have other grant work tied in associated with this as far as reporting and timelines go that we need to get this project moving to make sure we meet the deadlines that are associated in the consent order. The next item on here, again, we talked last week is about some upgrades of our existing and aging lift stations and pump stations. Again, we have some needs out there now. This is work I'd like to start this year and roll into next year. It's about 1.25 million, but again, there's some needs out there now that we need to take care of. The Mildred Drive thing, once again, that Brian had it on there. We talked about that last week. There's 2 old aging siphon systems on 2 large sanitary mains that we need to get out. They're not adequately working properly. The flow is not moving there adequately. We need to get that out. That's going to improve all the work that we're doing on the consent order. And that's something that we can now do because of things that have been changed out there. The new equipment, we talked about that's in there already. And Brian's saying I won't really waste time on that. And then the full depth road reconstructions, we touched on that last time, which is Wallace and Lemoyne off of the Broadway Grunner area. The drainage components, once again, in the North Transit Hill in the Woods area at $1 million. And then the park upgrades with the walking path and playgrounds. So again, it's ironic that the dollars are almost the same. This page is $15.5 million. And again, this work is all kind of hand in hand. The contracts that we have ready to go, I can't put out the bid because as we know in the past, we have to clearly define in our contracts the scope of work we are going to do based on our needs to the state. So we need to clearly identify what we're going to try to accomplish through our public works contract, through our annual concrete contract, through our lining contracts. And again, we need to get this to the state for some of their approvals pre-bid on our lining contract. So a lot of it's convoluted, but we need to make some timeline decisions. And again, it's great that we have this ARPA ability, but if we didn't have ARPA, we'd be talking about this on the capital side anyway. So again, not to repeat myself, these are time sensitive things. And again, we're kind of behind the 8 ball already. So at that, I'll just kind of throw it back to you guys if you've got questions on that. And last time we talked, everyone kind of agreed that these are important needs. And again, not that other items weren't that people mentioned today, but we need to kind of figure out what we're going to do so I can put all these packages out together and get things rolling.
Mark, so this list right here for the 15.5 million, you can do that this summer or start it anyway.
It will get everything on the list started this year, Diane. Most of it is probably going to roll into 23. That 6.4 million, that's going to be a 2-year project there with the lining. You know, the support work will probably be done. The military work will probably be done. The road work will probably be done. Some of the station work's going to be rolled over into 2 years, but everything we need to get out the door either one way or another because these contracts do time together. But this work will definitely be started here, hopefully as early as the spring, depending on when we make a decision. Yes.
Okay. Any other board members?
I agree, it's got to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And we really should move on it now so he can get these projects up and going.
I agree, Linda. Councilmember Nowak, you said?
Yeah, I reached out to the folks at Erie County Sewer just to get a sense of what ARPA funds are going into sewer districts 1 and 4 that overlap into town. And they're making some significant investments in lining and manholes, and there's a couple other projects. So seeing we were talking before about the sanitary sewer work related to the order, and that number is 6.4 million for all the lateral connections. I think we've got to put some of this into the sewers in a significant amount because they're doing it at the county level, and it gets to a general fairness with the taxpayers throughout the town that are in the different sewer districts we have, So I think it's a good priority for us to put a significant amount of this in the sewers.
I agree. I think we have to do it. I mean, I know I've been a big part of this DEC consent order since I started in 2016, but that whole section about this pilot study, we have to get that going this year, correct, Mark? Because we've let that go too long and the DEC wants to see things happen in there.
Absolutely, Diane. Yeah, we need to get that off the ground and moving. I mean, it took a long time for us to go back and forth with them and kind of broker an approvable plan. We finally got that, but like I said, we're on the clock. And as we are with the other items, I mean, some of this early phases of the DEC consent order, we have to have done by 2024, which is around the corner in terms of construction. So yeah, so you are absolutely right that we are on the clock on these items and we need to get
and
moving.
Also Rick Coburn's portion of it for the private I&I inspections. I think we got to include that somewhere.
Exactly, Diane. That's, again, we've had separate meetings on that because it is the same order. It's 2 separate components of it. We have the construction side with what you're seeing here, and then we have the inspection side. But yes, the inspection side is tied into the order, and we have to do that one way or the other as well.
What is Rick still on? What was Rick's? So he had 1.38 million, but that included remediation. So just to do a subcontract for the 2,500 homes.
Yeah, I believe he had like 400 grand set aside for that time, like 380,000, 400 grand, something like that.
So I think we need to keep that in mind to get going on a RFP to get those inspections done.
On point of order with the inspections, is that something we would have to talk about bonding with? Because I've only been skimming the final rule from the Treasury for how we can use ARPA. And it talks about like assisting folks that are low income with the impacts of COVID. I mean, if somebody can explain to me how we can use ARPA to do that part, I'm open to the idea, but I kind of struggle with the thought that we can use that particular bucket of money to do that.
Well, there's 2 pieces to that puzzle, Councilmember. One was doing the inspections that the DEC wants us to get into these homes besides the time of sale inspections. And we don't have enough bodies to do that we have now. So we'd have to subcontract that to do that sewer shed that they want us to do the pilot study and get in there and have these inspectors inspect the homes. And then the remediation part is the other part that Rick had mentioned that would be around $900,000. That's the part too that we'd have to figure out a way if we could help these residents through the ARPA funds.
And I am absolutely open to it. I
too.
just want to make sure we have every T crossed and every I dotted if we go down that route. Something we got to get done.
Well, we have no choice. You're right, because that's what they want. And if we don't do it, we're going to get fined. So it's going to cost us more money.
Diane, it's Pat. I just want to point out a couple things. One is we purposely chose sewer shed 3 because it's a low mod area. So some of those people might be eligible to apply for CDBG funds for some of the remediation work. The other thing I was going to point out is that $6.4 million, we've already basically committed to doing that work. We're really trying to decide whether or not we're going to fund it through ARPA or through bonding.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then the other thing I need to kind of follow up on Councilmember Nowak's question here, and again, the handout that Brian Krause sent out today, one of the categories on the third page is like 5.2 and 5.3 and 5.4. What I mean by that is clean water, centralized wastewater collection and conveyance, clean water, combined sewer overflows, and other sewer infrastructure. I mean, those, again, not really knowing the definition like Brian Krause said earlier, but again, that's the whole point behind the inspection is to eliminate combined overflows from the private side, you know, to clean up and get better collection and conveyance systems. So again, not knowing their definition of it, but to me, that covers that area, if that makes sense.
That would be great if it did. Yes. I agree. So maybe we could have Brian Krause look into it further, how we could do it. But yeah, I remember saying they want to see us get into these homes.
Exactly, Diane. Yeah, you sat in those meetings with the DEC. I mean, they're very clear. And again, you know, it took us a while to get the approval plan. We're at that point. And to Pat's point, you know, if we don't use ARPA, then we got to discuss bonding, but we got to get that 6.4 moving.
So anyway, for Tuesday's meeting, I mean, the board will give you direction, but I think we have to do these projects on this sheet anyway for the capital projects this year.
Yeah, Diane, again, that's great. This will be the ARPA, and I'm just going to go back again, is that the only outstanding thing not on that list is that 1.5 million for asphalt dollars. I'm a little concerned in asphalt prices this year, based on environments that are happening all over the world globally, that the price of oil may get crazy, which means asphalt could go significantly up. We have some asphalt dollars in-house, some coming our way through our annual CHIPS program and winter recovery and Pave New York. I believe the governor's going to fully fund them this year, which is great. But again, we still need that 1.5 that's unrelated, but that's going to be a traditional bond. So I just want to make sure you guys don't lose sight of that because there's a lot to digest here, you know?
So the 1.5, okay. So I guess we'll talk about this again on Tuesday and make the final decision. So I'm asking the board to be ready to let them know that you're okay with this plan plus the 1.5 for the asphalt and the repaving. Right now, Crystal, is that it?
Yeah, exactly, Diane. Then that'll give me the ability to start putting all the pieces together on these contracts. Hopefully, get some to the board for the 22nd meeting in February. The most time constrained ones. I'm going to try to get a couple of them on the 22nd. It's going to be tight, but I'm sure I can work with John Dudziak to get the approval on those. A lot of it's ready to go. It's just a matter of filling in the blanks based on decisions that are going to be made on Tuesday. And then the others will follow up in March. So again, hopefully we can hit the ground running here in April. And just as a follow-up, again, even though there's snowing today, we did receive 2 deliveries of the order of pipe that we placed last November based on our other concerns. So again, just to follow up, I'm confident and happy that some of the materials are starting to trickle in. So we're going to be in a good shape to construct these things because of what we did last November. So that's a good thing. So once again, thank you guys for the support on that, because it's a need, and here it is, like I said, beginning of February, things are starting to trickle in, which is good.
Great. Anybody else have anything to say about this subject matter? Okay, we do need a short executive session. I just have to get the wordage here. To discuss matters leading to the possible employment of a particular corporation. Do I get a second? Do I have a second on that? Councilmember Hammer? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. No action to follow. And right after that, we'll adjourn the meeting. So thank you, everyone, and we'll go into the Zoom executive